How's it going, everybody? I decided I wanted to try and make my first ever sports card YouTube video here on the channel. I've kind of been seeing a trend in the sports card market that I wanted to bring to light, and I decided to do a bit of a deep dive just to kind of make my case on why the baseball card market has it all wrong. So enjoy the video and let's get into it. If you're like me and you've been in the baseball market for a while now, then you know one thing to be true, that people really don't pay premiums for pitcher cards, and pitchers really get no hobby love. When I was starting out a little bit before COVID-19, this much was true. You know, everyone at the shows, they will buy the card of their favorite hitter, the best player on their favorite team, the guys hitting home runs, the hot prospects, but that hobby love, it didn't really get extended towards pitchers. And as a pitcher myself, I never really understood it. And I really wanted to do a deep dive on what's been going on, because if you're in the hobby, you've definitely started to notice that there's been a little bit of a shift towards collecting pitcher cards. So for the parameters of this video, we're going to be breaking it up into two eras: the pre-Skeens era, which is 2023 and before, and then the Skeens era, which is going to be 2024 to present. And we're going to dive into how pitcher values have changed. Are they getting any love since Skeens joined the league, and do they deserve to be getting collected? So 2024 rolls around and the Skeens era begins. And you can see on the left here, his Bowman First auto started around $400, all right? And this was the most I had seen a pitching prospect really command at the time, and it was a hot topic. You know, people were wondering if that was overvalued. You know, how can you pay such a premium for pitchers? But then Skeens continued to roll. You know, after winning, the College World Series the year before, he entered his first MLB season, and he was really close to winning a Cy Young his rookie year. People don't really realize that if Chris Sale would have had like a 8 earned run blow up start, I think there's a real scenario where Skeens would have just won the Cy Young. He pitched 133 innings en route to a 1.96 ERA and had an incredible 170 strikeouts. And Skeens cards started to reflect this dominance. You can see there in July, cards going all the way up to $2,400 that year. And this was crazy. People were officially bought into the hype wagon on Skeens. This was the greatest start to a pitching career we had ever seen. He's in, social media. He's all over everything, dating a celebrity, kind of giving some like Derek Jeter vibes a little bit. And yeah, Skeens just continued to roll, man, and people really started to adopt his cards. I remember being at a card show, and I passed on buying one of these at I think it was like $270. And I do regret this to that day. You can see as the base went up to 2,400, it was really just mind-blowing, right? We had not seen a pitcher command this kind of premium really ever. Like the average sale is really starting to pick up, right? He's really kind of solidified himself in that mid-2000 range. And yeah, we're going to dive into further if he's going to continue to have that value and how that value has really changed collecting as a whole, and if it's carried on to other players. So now that we understand Skeens' prices, I wanted to take a moment to look at some of the other current day greats and upcoming prospect prices and just kind of compare the two. And what was really mind-blowing to me is we can see that Skeens is outperforming or, at least neutral with Bobby Witt Jr. And that was something I didn't anticipate heading into this video. I would have thought Bobby Witt would have been a bit above Skeens, and probably more like how Soto's priced over there. And I also threw in Connor Griffin just because, he's the most hyped up prospect right now. And I just wanted to see how his prices were comparing to Skeens as well. I'm not saying that Connor Griffin is a good buy there. I'm not saying any of these hitters are. But just good to kind of compare how the top pitcher is comparing to the top hitters and prospects of today's era. So the big question is, what has people excited about pitchers, Skeens, and is it carrying over to other pitchers in the hobby? And the answer I can say is yes. We're really starting to see a bit of a carryover into guys like Jacob Misiorowski and Cam Schlittler, who are also on incredible starts to their career. And as you can see here, I got 3 all-time legends on the right, and this is their first 3 years, right? So Skeens and Miz, they're both 24 years old. Schlittler is 25. And then Kershaw was through age 22 season. Maddox was through age 22. And Randy Johnson was through 26 over here on the right. So as we can see, Skeens is just destroying the competition here. It's not even really close. Um, you can argue Kershaw is a bit younger than Skeens at this point, which is valid, but just seeing Skeens kind of on a trajectory over Maddox, over Johnson, and maybe over Kershaw as well here is just incredible. And then you slide over a little bit, and what really surprised me is Cam Schlittler has 5.3 WAR, and I really didn't realize how good he's been so far. So you got him, and then obviously Mizorowski with the just mind-blowing stuff, right? I mean, when have we seen a starting pitcher who throws harder than all the closers, right? And he just throws like that for, 6 innings. I mean, it's almost like if Mason Miller was a starting pitcher and throwing 6 or 7 innings. I mean, it's just incredible what Mizorowski's been able to do. And we really saw hype there as well, right? They made an exception to kind of let him start in the All-Star game. We're going to dive into the prices on these guys and just kind of compare and contrast and see how they've been doing since the start of the Skeens era. So diving into the pitcher prices that we're seeing on some of those guys, I also put Tariq Skubal on the slide as well. I wanted to compare how a 2-time Cy Young, who is, he's pushing 30 years old, unlike, Mizorowski and Schlittler over here. But I just want to see how his prices compared as well. As we can see, what's really interesting is Mizorowski is getting more of a premium than Tariq Skubal. And Skubal's coming off 2 Cy Youngs. He's about to be a free agent. He's going to be able to go to the Dodgers, the Yankees, a really big market team. So maybe some good value there in Skubal cards. But we can see Mizorowski is getting a real premium here. I couldn't find an image of his PSA 10 logo, so just bear with me there. And same for Schlittler. There's just Schlittler's cards just came out, so there's not a whole bunch of him. So I actually used the prices of his refractor, and one just sold for $2,000. And I was also able to find some sales data on the Chrome 10, and those are also doing about $650 to $800. So those are getting a premium as well. But really incredible to see that hobby enthusiasts are buying into these pitchers. Not as much Tariq Skubal, but they are taking chances with Mizorowski and Schlittler. And then just kind of throwing some more sales data out there with some of the other upcoming pitchers and prospects. As we could see, this Seth Hernandez is really starting to get some attention here. Bowman first auto in a 10, selling for about 600 to 760 bucks. Really impressive. That's showing people are actually prospecting pitchers. And we can see Cade Anderson getting a little bit of that love as well. A early first round pick for the Mariners. His Bowman first autograph in a 10, selling for about 300 to 400 bucks. Pretty good. Shows some interest there for sure. And then another guy I thought we'd look at, Nolan McLean. I thought this one was a little interesting. We have a hitter image, but if you know baseball, you know that McLean is a really good pitcher, and he's having a great start to his career as well. And the sales reflect it, $900 all the way down there at the bottom, and then kind of more in that $760 range, $800, but pretty strong sales there as well for a pitcher. So now that we've reviewed the current day stars and kind of what they're selling for, I figured it was time to dive into the pre-Skeens era, and I found this cool graphic, a little bit of a shot at each one of these all-time greats. But we're going to dive into their prices and see if they've started to receive that premium and that interest that Skeens has kind of brought into pitcher cards. Looking at who I'm considering the GOAT of the 1990s, we have Greg Maddux. And I went ahead and grabbed his 1987 Topps Traded Tiffany card. I think that this is his gold standard rookie. I think this is the one that's kind of stood out among the bunch here. And we can see that the pop count is about 730 for PSA 10. And most recently here in May 24, we saw that one just sold for $1,433. And what I was interested to see was what were these cards selling before the Skeens era? And, it does have a lot of overlap with prime COVID, but we're far enough out from that where I think that we can just look at those prices and compare them to the modern day. And what we see is the range for those Maddux Tiffany cards was actually a little bit higher. Like any market, there's going to be ebbs and flows, but there was definitely a time period where this card was anywhere between $800 and $1,500. And then kind of comparing that to what we're seeing in today's sales, we can see that the card's flat, right? that hype that Skeens is bringing to the hobby has not moved towards Greg Maddux. So I thought he was a good case example here. I also have a whole bunch of his stats over here on the right. The left side of the graphic, this is going to be kind of how I'm formatting this video. The left column is going to be his career stats, and the right is going to be about his 10 to 11 year peak. So we can kind of see how the pitchers track in their prime. And now looking at the best pitcher of the 2000s, I pulled the 1989 Topps Tiffany Randy Johnson PSA 10. And there's only about 113 of these PSA 10s, so it's a very rare card. And this is really the first time that we've seen the Skeens era cards kind of diverge from pre-Skeens era. As we can see here, the most recent sale in 2026 is just under $5,000. And we can see early in that 2020 to 2030, this card could have been had anywhere from around $1,000 to $2.5K. And then when we look at the PSA 9 and the Pop 475 there, we see that this card is really flat since 2022. So not much interest going into those PSA 9s. That card not appreciating the same way the PSA 10 has. And then we have the best pitcher of the 2010s, Clayton Kershaw. And I thought for sure after seeing Randy Johnson, having a bit of an uptick in his price, we would see the same for Kershaw, especially with the dominance of the Dodgers. And when we look into it, the one I've identified as his best card, this 2008 Topps UNH Clayton Kershaw Rookie Chrome kind of refractor card. Seeing that there's only a Pop 30, I thought for sure this card would trade at a richer premium than that Randy Johnson traded. And we can see the most recent sale was $3,600 here in 2026. And when I looked at the pre-Skeens era comps, a PSA 10 actually did $4,000 in 2022. Now this is a card that doesn't have a lot of sales history. It doesn't come up much, but that's another reason I thought it would be trading a little richer than what the Randy Johnson was. And I thought it would have aged, gracefully into the Skeens era, especially with us just seeing Kershaw's retirement. And then we look at the PSA 9, a Pop 60 in the Skeens era. This has been about $1,000 to $1,300 here card. As recently as a couple days ago, one of these went for sale. And then in the pre-Skeens era, this card got all the way up to $1,782 in June 2022. So overall here for Kersh, a little bit of a surprising result. We're just not seeing that premium that Skeens has brought into pitching collecting carried over into the most recent legend, Clayton Kershaw. And I thought it'd be important to look at some of the other current legends as well. So we got Justin Verlander. I couldn't even find this card in a PSA 10. This is his red refractor from 2006, his Topps Chrome rookie. Back then they did the colors a little bit differently, so this is the best parallel of this card. A lot of people will say his 2005 draft pick card is his more iconic card, but we're going to get into that card a little bit later in the video as well. For me, I really like this card, and I thought that it was kind of mind-blowing here to see that a Pop 17 of the rarest refractor of Verlander is only selling for about $950 in 2025. And then we look at the pre-Skeens era. This card was all the way up to $2,000. Now, recently a PSA 9 just sold for $650. So I would guess that the next PSA 10 will do in the low $1,000 range. But pre-Skeens era, that PSA 9 also doing only $650. So really Verlander not getting much love here as well, and definitely can't have a video where you're talking about pitcher legends and not discuss Justin Verlander, a guy who's won an MVP. So, all-time legend here. Thought it was worth a quick look at his cards. Moving on to the best pitcher of the 2010s 1C, we got Max Scherzer's PSA 10. This card came in that same set as Kershaw's iconic card, and only a Pop 22 here. And surprisingly enough, a card that rare, only peaking out about $2,000 in the Skeens era, kind of here recently in 26. Then we look at the pre-Skeens era. This card was all the way up to $4,100 in 2021, and then it's been over that $2,000 essentially is the case I'm trying to make here. And then we look at the PSA 9, a Pop of 35, most recently selling for $600 in 2025, and then we see pre-Skeens era, this card's selling at $2,000, several years apart in the pre-Skeens era. So Max Scherzer, another all-time legend, a great someone who I think is going to age well in the hobby, just not getting that love from the Skeens card boom. And then I also used Claude to kind of make a deep dive here on the pitching legend data. I went ahead and just grabbed the iconic card for each player. I actually used the Verlander gold border from the 2005 draft pick here instead, just because there's more sales data. And as you can see, kind of like the scatter plot here, that Randy Johnson's Tiffany is really the only, divergent sales data here, right? We see that card just over $2,000 and up to $5,000 recently. But interestingly enough, we see each name, the 2022 or 23 or 21 comp, they're over what they're going for most recently. So I thought this was interesting. A lot of pitcher legends here. Kershaw's old card doing better than his recent sales. Sandy Koufax, his rookie in a PSA 6. Nolan Ryan kind of bucked the trend. His PSA 6 has his most recent sale is a little higher, but still pretty similar there. But overall, just the legends not really getting any of that love that Skeens has brought into the pitching collecting. Then looking at the hitter legends as well, we see kind of the other side of the coin. We see a Barry Bonds 10, really appreciated greatly. We see a Babe Ruth, that one's really appreciated. The Hank Aaron has started to kind of move away from the 2022 comps. But then we see the Willie Mays and the Pujols trading about flat to even. So those legends not getting the love that you would expect as well. So key takeaways here that pitcher legends, they really haven't been good investments despite growing interest in collecting pitchers. But I do want to note that past performance is not an indicator of future performance. Now, this is in no way financial advice, but I do want to say that pitchers, they have a spot in your collection, right? Especially these GOATs. And I do think as Skeens is shifting the narrative towards collecting pitchers, I wouldn't be surprised if we see some of that love eventually shift into the legends. A lot of card prices have gotten really expensive here recently, right? We've seen just an incredible run up on almost all cards, but pitchers are a big part of the game too, and we're not really seeing them, they're not partaking in that run up right now. And I think that's something that the card market is really mispricing. So that's why I wanted to make this video. And then real quickly, just kind of looking at what today's greats need to become legends. So in 2026, the average MLB start is 5.1 innings. At that average, it will take 589 starts to reach 3,000 innings. That's kind of the benchmark, a lot of those all-time greats that we were looking at. And 20 years of 30 starts to be able to get there. So just really, really tough stuff for these current guys to live up to. And then assuming they keep that 28% strikeout rate, it would take 16 seasons to get those 3,000 strikeouts as well. So just really, really tough things for these pitchers to live up to. And we're just going to have to see if they can do it. I mean, Mizorowski, Skeens, Schlittler, all off to phenomenal starts, but 3,000 innings is asking a lot, and being this good for 20 years is no short feat. But that's why a lot of these legends are so special, right? I don't think that we're going to see as many pitchers be able to put up these kind of stats, maybe ever again. With how common injuries have become, these statistics are really just incredible, and they deserve some premiums for being that incredible, right? And what do these guys have in common? They have playoff success, MVPs. We see a couple of these guys have won an MVP, but only 2 pitchers have won since 1990. And I think a pitcher MVP is incredibly rare, right? And that should be priced into the cards, right? You should see Kershaw, you should see Verlander getting a bit of a premium for being that different in a modern era. And then another thing, the 3 Cy Youngs in a 10-year span, that's kind of just a staple of being an all-time great. Skeens is early into his 10-year span, so is Skubal. Both of them on their way to their 3, I believe. And we also see they're all right around 3,000 innings, 500 to 600 games started, in that elusive 3,000 strikeout mark. But I just want to throw this graphic up here real quick. These are a lot of the other iconic pitcher cards as well, and kind of their top end sale and their lowest PSA 1 sale. But, these cards are great, and they're all cards I want in my collection someday. I have a Koufax SGC1, but would love to add some of these other guys eventually. That's going to pretty much do it for this video. If you made it this far, please let me know down in the comments, do these pitchers belong in a collection? Do they deserve more of a premium? Do you think that we're going to start seeing this love that Skeens has brought into the hobby translate to these all-time legends? And most importantly, does the sports card market have it all wrong? Do these pitchers deserve more of a premium? And do you think they're going to start seeing it? And thanks for watching, everybody. It was a lot of fun making one of these videos.